There was no other.
Yeah.
There's some things that just work.
All right, I'd like to call this meeting to order. If you please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Okay, roll call. Councilor Cody.
Here.
Councilor Crafts.
Here.
Councilor Rochelle.
Here.
Councilor Lunt.
Here.
Councilor Mason.
Here.
Councilor Pomelo.
Here.
And Councilor Bowie is here. So Twyla, before we could get started, could you give us a little update on our voting?
Sure. These are still preliminary election results. We will finalize and certify them by Friday. But we want to report that the Town Council at-large winner is Fern La Rochelle. Town Council District 1, Gina Mason. And Town Council District 2, Roger Bickford. For Budget Advisory Board at-large, the winner was by write-in, Thomas Barry. Budget Advisory Board District 1, John Wiersbicky. Budget Advisory Board District 2, Debbie Barry. And for School Committee, Tracy Austin and George Karen. And for Water Commission, Bill Bauer. There were 862 write-in ballots, and in total, 3,908 ballots cast, which was 57% of our voting population voting.
Great, thank you, and congratulations to everybody. Okay, what's our first item tonight, Twyla, please?
Is under consent agenda, Order 2010-181 to approve the minutes of September 21 and October 5.
I'll make a motion that we accept the minutes.
I'll second that.
I have a motion from Councilor La Rochelle and a second from Councilor Pomelo. All those in favor?
Order passed, 7-0.
Do this real quick. No, we'll do it at the end. Okay, next item, please. Actually, we have a change in our agenda
Right.
tonight. Under Orders and Resolutions Council, the general unit is not ready for us to vote on their contract agreement yet, so we'll have to delay that at least another meeting. So that will also take that off from our executive session. And another executive session item under 183 is also not going to happen tonight due to our general assistant's office not being quite ready to process all of that information. So with that, Twyla, our next item would be other business.
Yes. Library Department presentation.
This is just a continuation of department heads' fall updates on how their summers went and where their programs are.
Good evening. Thank you for allowing me the time to give the council and the Lisbon citizens an update on library services. I just completed the annual report, and it shows that the Lisbon citizens rely on the library for many services in these hard economic times. They relied on the library for the regular stuff like bestsellers and new nonfiction DVDs, videos, audio materials. Adult book circulation was up by 5% last year. Over 30,000 adult books went out. Children's books were up by 3%. Over 20,000 children's books were checked out. And videos, DVDs were up by 10%. The services that showed the largest and most significant increase were computer, internet, Wi-Fi access. We averaged last fiscal year 402 Lisbon residents per month who came through the library doors seeking computer assistance. That's up from 21% from the previous year. They required or used 2,749 hours of computer time to complete their business. That's up by 27% from the previous year. That doesn't count the Lisbon residents who own their laptops and come in to just hook up to the Wi-Fi. We average 3 to 5 citizens a day who do that. It could be simple as checking their email, but we do have businessmen that come and conduct business that way. You can sort of hear them speaking with their clients, so it's a very important service to them. And take a look early mornings and evenings after we're gone or before we're open. If you see cars parked in front of the library, Union Street, and you see people clicking away, they're just hooking up to our Wi-Fi and doing what they need to do before they go to work, so it's a nice service. What we saw certainly was an increase in citizens who required our assistance to do their computer work. We saw an increase of people who were first-time users who'd never even turned on a computer. But they were told in these hard economic times, go to the library and apply for jobs online. And so we helped as much as we could. There were also many citizens who came to us because they can only deal with the federal and state agency via online now. They can't send forms, they have to do them online. So we had that kind of increase in business. So we were happy to assist the best we could. We tried our best to have computers available. We added 1 more station and 2 used laptops. And on some days, they're all busy, almost 8 hours a day. So it's really hopping. The other service that we added last year was fax services. And up until a couple months ago, when the little print shop opened on Union Street, we were the only facility that offered fax services to the Lisbon community. They'd have to travel to Brunswick or Topsom, so it was nice to have. The children's services continue to bring children of all ages to the library. Last year, our weekly preschool programs brought 2,007 little kids to the library every week, and that's up by 11% from the previous year. And our summer reading program was very successful and fun this past summer. 153 school-age children read 1,864 books in 6 weeks, and that's an increase of 27% from the previous year. Wow. And many of you know that their success meant that Joe Jean Keller, the children's librarian, and I had to meet their challenge. And so on a warm August morning, we met here at the front parking lot, and we put on our new shiny pink Public Works hard hats and pink T-shirts that said Lisbon Public Works Department. And Public Works rolled in a vehicle about every half hour, and we washed 10 very dirty and very big Public Works vehicles. And so we thank Public Works. They were really, really good sports and their support. And they even allowed us to sort of jazz them up. We put beads, flowers, bows, ribbons, and just a squirt of perfume just to let them know that we wanted to make a difference. They were good sports. They drove away, all bedazzled, and lined them up for a few days there, so it was fun. So we thank Public Works. They were good sports. The library building continues to serve the community very well. We reconfigured the children's room last summer. It doubled our open space, so that we can have more programs at the library, not have to go off-site to the VH Club or someplace else. It gave us better supervision of the entire room, and it gave us much-needed shelving space. And so it really is a nice room now. That's what we had envisioned 9 years ago, and they had reversed the room, and then the money ran out, so it was nice to be able to do it. We thank the Friends of the Library who recently gave us a nice gift that is allowing us to upgrade the bathroom in the children's room. That poor little bathroom has seen one too many floods and sewer problems, and so it was in need of some upgrade. With their donation, we were able to bring in Norm Lamphere. He upgraded the lighting, and Roger Roy painted the walls, and he's currently putting in a nice new tile floor. And the children are very excited about a nice bathroom. So they were lining up today to go to the bathroom. So it was kind of nice that they wanted to see what it looked like. So we thank the Friends for that gift. The one issue that we still continue to have with our building is that brick wall in that program room facing the garden. Mr. Eldridge is aware of it. Ryan and I keeping an eye on it, and certainly, you know, as funds becomes available, we'll have to address that because they're crumbling daily. We're vacuuming daily, so hopefully we can address that. I would just like to end by telling you that I attended the New England Library Association annual meeting in Boxborough, Mass. 2 weeks ago as the Maine state representative. I attended many classes in that capacity and met a lot of New England librarians, and I'm very proud and happy to say that the services we provide here in Lisbon really match what big libraries do in New England, Worcester, Portsmouth, all of them. We do it on a smaller scale because our population's not as big, but we do it all from books to computers, and so we're very, very proud of that. We'll continue to reach out to the community and try to meet all their needs in these hard economic times as funds allow. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Questions of Diana?
She has it pretty well covered.
Doing a great job. I got to ask you one question, though. Was washing the trucks in your pink outfits better than sitting on the roof of the fire department?
Yes, not as
Okay.
scary. And we really like the sweeper. That's the first one they rolled in at about 7:30 in the morning. I think they thought they'd overwhelm us, and we were like, yay! And so he thought, well, let's keep them coming. And we washed every truck that wasn't working that day. Those that were on Route 9, every place else couldn't. And then we heard from, it was kind of nice because when we'd see them, they'd say, hey, you didn't wash my truck. Well, you were working. So, but they were all good sports, and so it was good cooperation.
Maybe next year, right?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, wait next year. I don't know what we'll do. Thank you.
Okay, next item, please, Twyla.
Parks Department presentation.
I also want to thank you and the citizens of Lisbon for hearing what I have to say about Beaver Park. Most people on the council are familiar that Beaver Park is 337 acres. I'm in charge of that. I'm also in charge of Summer Street Park, which is 30 acres. I've been trying to increase different programs at Beaver Park, and some of the things that I've done is I do a morning walk on Thursdays. I call it Trek Across Lisbon. I give people who show up a choice. We walk from Beaver Park to the boat landing along the Paper Mill Trail, or we walk in Beaver Park for an hour. Now, this summer I also, every day, whoever wanted to come out, and at one time I had about 6 or 7 people coming, and we'd go for a bike ride for an hour before you know, from 7 to 8. The Androscoggin County had their bike farm tour stop at Beaver Park this summer. We have our fishing derby, which is a huge success, and this past year we had over 150 kids who participated. That includes all the that doesn't include all the grandparents and the parents who came with those children. And that program really involves the whole community. We receive donations from the merchants in town or just individuals who support fishing for the kids, and sometimes people will call and ask me if they can donate money, you know, which is awesome. You know, people, you don't usually get that. And the kids look forward to it every year. We have it first first Sunday in May, April, whenever, they're starting to ask, when's the Derby, when's the Derby? It's really a popular program that's taken off. I had some guided wildflower walks, and I coordinate that through the Lisbon Adult Ed program, and then I also send out information. So I get to work with them on that and with the wreath programs. This was new that I did this fall, was a tree identification program, and I had over 22 people show up for this from all over the place, New Gloucester, Lewiston, Lisbon, Brunswick, and we identified the different trees in Beaver Park, and they really enjoyed it, and they looked forward to other programs that I might be able to do at the park. We had a photography program. Mike Leonard from the Portland Photography Club came out and spent the morning. We probably had 20 people that day, and just took them out in the park. It was in the spring with the wildflowers. He used that, and then afterwards I took people out for a walk and identified the different flowers in the park and stuff. And that was a real successful program. And then, of course, wreath season, which is what I'm doing now, cutting fir trees and getting ready. I had scheduled 6 classes. I've already opened up a 7th one. Last year I had 9. I'm sure I'll probably be up there this year before I close it off. Again, that program has just taken off, and people love coming, making their wreaths, going home. They've got this beautiful wreath all made, and they can say they made it. And I have people not just from Lisbon Falls, but Lewiston, Auburn, New Gloucester. They come from different places. Families will get together, and they'll 6 or 7 of them come together, or people who work together will block off a section of time. So that's gotten to be real popular and almost overwhelming at times. It's just too many of them. I've been trying to work more with the schools, getting the schools to come out and use the park more. We had Dyke Newell School from Bath. They came out and did their picnic. Lisbon Elementary comes in and they do their picnic. But we also have Mrs. Newell's physics class from the high school who's been coming into the park for they come in, they have to make a boat that floats with cardboard, duct tape, and plastic. And this is their physics class, and she brings all her kids out for that. And then we had the sophomore class who came out in the spring for community service, and then I just had the senior class come out for more community service. And they help move a lot of brush. So I cut the brush back the trails, and I cut for 3 or 4 days, and they come in, they clean it up in a couple hours. So otherwise I'd be there 3 or 4 weeks cleaning it up. But so they do really, I really appreciate all that extra help that they give me. The Lone Pine Lodge is being used a lot more. We've got the Quilton ladies use it every Monday, which has been going on. The Conservation Commission meets there. But we had memorial gatherings. We have a family that just called, and they've been doing it for a couple of years now. They have their Christmas dinner there. They gather their family and they have their Christmas dinner at Beaver Park. The cross-country team, they're still using it daily basis. I have to build a fire for them, and they warm up and go out for a run. Girl Scouts, Boy Scouts. We've had birthday parties, 4-H groups. And then this year we had 2 weddings at Beaver Park. So it's like, usually after August and school starts, I get a break. But this year there's been no break. It's just like people have discovered the park. Today I was gone for a while. I came back, and there were like 2 or 3 cars coming in the park. One couple was from Lewiston. They wanted to go for a hike. And then there were 4-H people coming in, and somebody walking their dog. And, this is November 1st. Usually it's quiet November 1st. But people are just discovering it. And the people from Lewiston, after they came back from their walk, she came up to me. She says, I am so impressed. And she couldn't believe that we had that we had. She goes, I've been to Thorncraig, but I'm tired of walking in Thorncraig. And this is beautiful. This is wonderful. We'll be back. We'll buy a pass. And I hear that more and more all the time. And so it's nice. We've had Mrs. Smith sent in a couple donations in memory of 2 different individuals who used the park this year. And I've been hearing a lot more positive stuff from people. More people are coming out to the park, just walking, We've got skiing coming up, cross-country skiing, and it just seems to be busy, a lot more busy. So I can go into some of my work details, but I don't know if you're interested in that or not. If you are, I can. We did have, unfortunately, a drowning this year. It was determined that it was a medical it was because of a medical condition. It was a young gentleman. He had a seizure when he was in the water. That's my most dreaded time, and every September I kind of breathe a sigh of relief that nothing's happened, but we did everything that we could. It didn't have any, didn't do anything wrong, so it just happened, unfortunately. So, and I think we're getting more people. Thorncraig has just changed their policy, no dogs in their park, and I've been getting some of those people coming to Beaver Park and buying passes so they can walk their dogs. So it all kind of works. Any questions?
Question?
I have one. How much is a park pass?
If you're a Lisbon resident, it's $1 per person, or you can buy a family pass for $15 for the year. And
Okay.
if you're a non-resident, it's $3 per person, or $30 for the year. And sometimes the $1 is harder to get than the $3.
Also, I mean, last year you were actually doing some tree correction. You had some trees falling into the canyon or the area that's been kind of eroding away.
Yeah.
Can you just give us an update how that actually worked out, or if there's
Well,
things that are going to need to be
I
done?
had the trees removed. We put bids out. We had the trees removed, and the logs that came out of there, I had cut into lumber, and I've got it in the shed, and I want to build a shed, a small storage shed with that next spring. Then we needed to do something to prevent further erosion from occurring. So, again, went to the contractors, and we've hired Carl Houston to come in, and he will do the work. It's quite a in-depth detail project, but he has agreed to do it. He'll work with Public Works and keep the costs down. We wanted it done before winter. I hope we can get it done before winter. His dad is sick right now, and his father-in-law just died, so he just went through a whole bad spell. But he called me and he told me he's still planning on getting to it. So,
I had
So
spoke
we're
to him in the
still-
past. He actually had some ideas of what could help out there, so I'm glad. That was my concern. I was just wondering if we were just kind of Band-Aiding it, or if we were actually trying to correct it, because if not, it's going to be an ongoing problem, right?
that's right, and I think Carl has a good handle on it. I think he understands what's happening, and I think he'll be able to hopefully fix it,
Good, thank you.
So,
Any other questions from? No? Okay. Thank you, Burley.
you're welcome.
Okay. Yeah, next item, please.
Tax update, Bill Van Tynen.
Okay. Steve's gonna get Bill in a second.
I just thought of something else.
Sure.
Channel 11 is running the Christmas Eve program.
Oh, that's good. Yeah.
So Channel 11's running your Christmas tree program again? Okay. Good. Good evening, Bill.
Would you like me to just start with a little bit of a summary of
where we are, what we've been
Yep,
looking at.
that'd be great, yep.
Go from there. I think that Steve has shared with the counselors a memo that I wrote to him that more or less summarizes where we are, and I'd like to just go over that with everybody, and then maybe expand on it a little bit and answer any questions that you have. One of the things that I had, I think, already developed when I met with you a while back was a spreadsheet that summarized all of the 2009 real estate values and all of the 2010 real estate values, and developed the multiplier of the 2010 valuation divided by the 2009 valuation. And we've been looking at that spreadsheet to just try to make sure that things look reasonable and double-check things that don't fit with that 132% overall multiplier. And the vast majority of properties, when you scan that list, did increase by the factor of 1.32. The one category that doesn't fit that mold is mobile homes. And I didn't expect the mobile homes to be multiplied by the factor of 1.32. However, when we look at a lot of the properties, many of the mobile homes don't have a factor of 1. They have a factor of less than 1. And when we looked at the manual mobile home cards, they basically have a penciled-in number for 2010 that states this is the valuation for 2010. That manually calculated number is then entered in the computer, and that's the valuation that appears in the valuation book and on that list that I have compiled. There's nothing but the bottom line number on the card. There's not a documented methodology, as far as I can tell at all, that explains where that bottom line number came from. That's one of the things that I've discovered. Some of the mobile homes didn't go down. Some of them went up, but the vast majority of them didn't go up in value and, in fact, went down somewhat. One group, a small group of properties that didn't go up the 1.32 multiplier, and I can't understand exactly why. We're trying to look into it, sort through it, understand it, see if it's proper or if it should be corrected, are some newer homes. There are some newer homes. So far, we've just found 16 that didn't go up by the 1.32 multiplier. If we see an objective reason why they shouldn't have gone up, we'll probably just leave them where they are. But if it appears that it was some kind of an error that they didn't increase in value, we will adjust them upward by the same multiplier that was used for other properties. Tree growth values appear to be somewhat consistently miscalculated. And I don't understand exactly why. I just understand that the bottom line appears to be incorrect. Just so everybody knows, with a tree growth parcel, it's a form of current use taxation. It's a state law that requires, if someone has classified their land as tree growth value property, the town has to value that classified land at the state tree growth rates multiplied by the town's valuation ratio. So on a lot of properties, it's not 100% tree growth. They might have 50 acres of land and 3 acres around the home, maybe a home site in the field, something like that, and the rest of it's tree growth. So on those kinds of properties, you have to value the 3 acres in that example that's not under tree growth with the regular valuation system, and the 47 acres that would be under tree growth with the tree growth rates. So we have to sort through all of those, and we've started on this work, but we're not finished with it, and look at the manual calculation of the property on the old valuation card, and on the portion that is a home site and a few acres or whatever it might be that aren't in tree growth, we're going to take the old manual calculated value for that portion of the land, multiply it by 1.32, so it's done the same way as other land in town. And then on the tree growth portion, we have to calculate the value at the tree growth rates times the 80% ratio. That portion is all, it's in the computer correctly. It's, so we have, probably, I think what we will do is manually calculate the non-tree growth portion, look up the correctly calculated tree growth portion on the computer, add them together, and then we have to enter the bottom line as an override on the computer system for tax billing. They all appear to be somewhat overvalued. Farmland values are the same way. Farmland values are very similar to tree growth. It's a state program for current use taxation, and if someone classifies their land as farmland under the farmland tax, you have to value the tree growth, the forested portion and the farmed portion of that parcel at the tree growth rates or farmland rates multiplied by the town's ratio. And we have to do the same process for those to correct the values as we do on the tree growth parcels. Another area I know that we discussed a little bit, I think the last time we met, was Route 9. There were, as you all know, some takings by the state for the reconstruction and widening of Route 9. And to the best that I can understand everything, those takings were all reflected in the manual cards. So with the manual system, if somebody lost a 1/10 of an acre or a 1/5 of an acre or a 100th of an acre, at least there's a small change in the valuation calculation to reflect that taking. But those changes made on the manual cards never made it into the computer system. So we have to take those bottom line values that are already manually calculated, multiply them by 1.32, and enter the bottom line in the computer. What I think is in the computer now is the previous year's valuation before the taking multiplied by 1.3. It's not a, to the best of my knowledge, with the ones that I've looked at so far, it's not a gigantic valuation issue, but it's a mistake that needs to be corrected. If somebody lost some land and doesn't have as much land as last year, it should be reflected in this year's valuation. There are some abatement requests that have been filed on the tax commitment that was made earlier in the year. And on any of those that appear to be based on some kind of an error or some kind of a mistake that we can look into and solve, it's my plan to try to address as many or all of those as I can. Some of them, I think, are the valuation went up 1.32 on the land, 1.32 on the building, the tax went up. That's not something that I'm going to try to address. I'll try to address it later on after the tax commitment is redone and goes out with commitment papers that make it a valid tax commitment. But for the time being, I don't think I have the wherewithal to look at those before a tax commitment goes out. The personal property, I think there may be a few issues that need individual attention, but it looks to me like the personal property valuations are entered into the computer with an estimate or with actual cost, with annual depreciation, as the equipment aged, with in a sensible manner. I don't see a lot of substantial issues with the personal property. And the way I look at the things that I've been talking about and describing to you are really in two ways. One way is just to meet the immediate need of perfecting a valid tax commitment for 2010. And the second thing is how to best address those things on a longer term basis in terms of managing and conducting business in the tax assessor's office, how to manage the records and manage the values in a reasonable workmanship way. And first of all, for the immediate tax commitment, on the mobile homes, you have a substantial number of mobile homes. I don't think that I have much of an alternative other than to accept that the mobile home values are a reasonable estimate of value based on the system that you have in place now. I don't think that you want me to take the time to look at every mobile home and reconstruct a record for each and every mobile home before we commit 2010 taxes. In the long run, I think that has to be done. I think you need to have a property record on the computer or on a card. I certainly prefer on the computer, that explains how the valuation of that mobile home is arrived at, rather than just a bottom line handwritten value, something that can be reconstructed, explained, and documented. Number three, the reduced valuation of the newer homes. We've got to look at it. If it wasn't updated because the valuation was already sufficiently high and it just couldn't take the 1.32 multiplier because it was already valued higher than it proportionally should have been with other homes, we'll leave it where it is. But if it was an oversight, if it was a mistake, and it's undervalued compared to other homes because it doesn't have that multiplier, we will change the value accordingly. I think that's just a problem probably for this year's assessment. For number 4, 5, and 6, tree growth, farm, Route 9, we got to go through the number crunching, change the computer values, make sure that those values are correct. On the abatements, if there's some issues that we can address before the tax commitment goes out, I will make every effort to address them and correct the valuation accordingly. In the long term, I think Lisbon needs to make progress in better management, streamlining the process of maintaining the tax assessments. You don't, for example, have photographs on the property record cards. There's the overused expression that a picture speaks 1,000 words. When you're somebody like me and you're in a town, and I haven't grown up here, I haven't worked here for the last 20 years, it would be amazingly helpful to have a photograph of the property that is the subject of the property record card, to see whether I'm talking about an old house, a new house, a rundown house, a really well-maintained house. It would be very, very helpful. That doesn't exist here. I think whether you're going to maintain tax assessed values at 75%, 80%, 100%, that's just a fundamental piece of information that would be very helpful to have in a tax assessment office. You have a computer system now. A lot of work went into getting a lot of information in the computer system. And again, whether you want to be at 70% of value, 75% of value, 80% of value, I think the town should make the effort to use that system effectively, to streamline the process. The idea of going in, like I described on tree growth, and looking at the old property record card, multiplying a portion of the value by 1.32, looking at the computer, getting that easily computed tree growth portion at an 80% ratio from that system, adding the two together, entering the bottom line as a separate item on the bottom line value is unnecessary work that if you don't get it all integrated, you just have to go through that kind of process every year. It's just good management, good record keeping, good use of somebody's time to make use of that technology and make the process better, easier, faster, less repetitive. Use the tool that's available. I think in the long run, you need to try to integrate that technology into the office and work with it more efficiently. With the mobile homes, and I might have said this already, but in the long term, I don't think you can just live with the bottom line value on a mobile home. And you need to have a systematic approach to their valuation. So I've talked a little bit about the immediate and about getting things better organized in the future. In terms of moving forward, we've tried to identify the issues. We've tried to make some progress on addressing those issues. And I have to emphasize to everybody here that I'm brought in at the 11th hour, maybe even half past midnight, to try to get your tax bills done, to get your commitment perfected and done and valid. And it's not like I've worked here for 3 years or a year or many years. I've just come in. And I'm going to try to look things over, audit things, make sure that they look reasonable, make sure that the holes that I've seen are reasonably addressed. But it's not like, I can't give it it's not like I've worked on it for 3 years, and I know it's right because, you know, I've worked with it, I worked with it, I worked with it. This is the way it's supposed to be. It's going to be the best that I can do, given where you are in the process and where I was brought into it. I will try to be able to commit taxes, and I'll try to commit taxes with your input and your understanding of everything that goes into it. In early December, I'll shoot for your first meeting in December. If I can't make it by the first meeting in December, I will try to do it by the second meeting in December, but I will try to do it by the first meeting in December. If in the process of going through things, I notice a hole that I haven't noticed so far, and I don't think that's going to happen, but if I do, I'm going to put the brakes on, and I will inform you and tell you, I got to do this before I feel comfortable committing the taxes. But the time frame that I just gave you is what I think is realistic based on all the analysis that we have done so far. Recapping from the last meeting that we had, one of the miscalculations that has occurred, in my opinion, and I think it's a very objective opinion, on the initial tax commitment was that even though some of the values of accounts in a TIF went down from the previous year, the amount of revenue appropriated for the TIF wasn't accordingly reduced. So there was an exaggerated statement of the amount of TIF revenue that needs to be raised by taxation in this year's initial tax rate calculation. And unless there is a substantial reduction in valuation as we go through some of this process, I would expect that the tax rate will be at least somewhat lower in the final tax commitment than it was in the initial tax commitment. I think that was made clear the last time I met with you, but just in case it wasn't clear, that would be my expectation based on everything that I've seen so far. One of the things that I looked at during the beginning of your meeting was I just compared a few things from 2009 and 2010. And in 2009, the valuation of personal property in the town was $41,023,375 at a tax rate of $25.50 a thousand. That meant that the tax raised from personal property was $1,046,096.14. This year, the personal property valuation in the tax commitment that was done was $29,235,700. Now that was at an 80% valuation ratio as opposed to a 56 or 62%, I forget exactly which one it was for the previous year. So even with the ratio adjustment, the valuation of personal property went down about $12 million. That, the personal property value in 2010 multiplied by the tax rate of 2160 raised $631,491.12, or about $415,000 less than last year. And you still had to raise that money, but it wasn't raised from the personal property tax base. It was raised from the real estate tax base. It was a shift. And there's other places where there were some shifts, but that's at least part of the shift. And it was that decline in personal property value that lowered the amount of revenue that needed to be raised for tax increment financing credit enhancement payments. So that's kind of a double whammy. The valuation was reduced, but the corresponding amount to be raised from that personal property valuation to pay for TIF payments wasn't correspondingly reduced. But that's at least part of the tax shift that Lisbon taxpayers, especially of residential property, have experienced so far this year. That's a brief summary, and I'm happy to try to answer questions. You may ask me some questions that I don't have the answer to, and if you do, I will try to respond later on when I have a chance to research an answer to your question.
Mike, may I?
Vice President?
Bill, I know one of the questions that we had the last meeting that people are concerned about is just obligations that, to make sure we are following the proper steps to the state. Can you just kind of give us a brief summary of where we are, and if the state's looking down on us like we're actually doing something evil or mean, or are we actually in works with them to, if they're helping us with time to actually take care of our problems?
I think that we're in compliance with things right now. And the reason I say that is there aren't the corresponding tax commitment papers to validate the tax commitment that was done, that have been compiled, signed by the appropriate municipal official, and given to the tax collector and the treasurer. So you essentially do not have a valid tax commitment. And therefore, we have to do a valid tax commitment, and I think that may be easier than correcting a tax commitment that was already made. If the tax commitment already made was valid, one of the things we looked at the last time I was with the council was the total amount raised by taxation in the tax commitment that you had. And because of the failure to adjust the appropriation for TIFs to the appropriate size with a reduced valuation on the TIF accounts this year, we were very close to being over a 5% overlay. We weren't over a 5% overlay, but we were very close to it. That means you would have had a valid tax commitment. It might have raised a little bit more revenue because of the error in calculating the TIFs than was necessary, but I don't know that there would have been a way to correct that. The only way to correct accounts that had an overvaluation because of a tree growth calculation error, that type of thing, would have been through the abatement process. This is going to allow us to iron out informally some of those kinds of things before there's a tax commitment. So I think we're okay. The one thing that I feared feared if the tax commitment had been valid, every town in the state has a report that they have to file with the state tax assessor called the Municipal Valuation Report, and it has to be complied with by November 1st or 30 days after the tax commitment, whichever is first. And it would have been very hard to, with your circumstance, to develop that report in any reasonable way in that by Monday. That gives me a breather, gives the town a breather in complying with that requirement. We'll have 30 days after a corrected tax commitment.
Whether that be the beginning of December or the end of December, that 30 days starts when we make our commitment.
Right?
Thank you.
Roger?
I'm confused about something. You said there was never a commitment done. Now you gotta correct the commitment. How can you have a commitment if it was never done?
There certainly was a commitment process that was done. Calculations were made, a valuation book was printed, tax bills were sent. The documentation called the commitment papers, signed papers and warrants to the appropriate officials, the tax collector and the treasurer, were not developed. That part of the commitment, which makes it a legal, valid, accurate commitment, was not done. So I have probably confused things a little bit. I think the town thought it undertook a commitment, but in actuality, the documentation to perfect that commitment was not done. So the final bottom line is you do not have at least a valid tax commitment as of right now for 2010. You have an effort to do a commitment, but it was imperfect.
Now, when the commitment is finally achieved, and we do have a commitment, I think these people are kind of sitting on an egg here, wondering, are we going to receive another bill for our taxes so we know where we set with the town and what to expect, what they will expect?
It certainly is my expectation that that can be done. That's not really my area of expertise, but it would be my expectation that the town, including the town council supporting the process, has to be prepared to be able to send out new tax statements, bills, whatever they're called, that say your tax bill for 2010 is this amount, with half due by this date and half due by this date. Based on the payments the town has received from you, you owe this much, or you have a credit of this much based on what you've paid. And the balance due, if they have an underpayment, it would be a balance due by a certain due date for the first half. If they have a credit, it would be a reduced balance due by a second date. I'm not your tax collector,
I understand that.
but that's what I would expect can be made to happen. That certainly is my expectation.
So the question arises now, what happens to people with mortgages that have their taxes taken out, and now they're going to be receiving another tax bill, and if their tax bill goes down, how is this adjustment going to be made? You know, if a person's taxes were increased dramatically, and after the final commitment is done, they're reduced, is there some way that we're gonna get back to the banks and tell them that their taxes are really not there?
Roger, I honestly don't know.
I can answer that.
Go ahead.
When we send out tax bills, we also send out tax bills to the mortgage holders. So they will get the adjusted bill and adjust it on their end. We don't just send it to the taxpayer, but the mortgage companies get a copy of the bill as well.
So that, what you're saying, Steve, is that we will be getting another bill, definitely.
With the adjustments, yeah.
Any other questions from council?
It's not really a question, it's just a comment about folks that have already maybe filed for the property tax and rent refund. If there is a corrected bill with a lower tax amount on it, people will then have that responsibility to submit that stuff to the state.
That I think I can
Do you know what I'm saying?
respond to.
If people have already filed an application for property tax and rent refund, because you could start doing that sometime in August, which is about the same time that we got those first bills, and there is an adjusted amount with these new bills that will go out in December, you know, people will have the responsibility of reporting that new amount to the state because they could have actually received an overpayment from that.
That property
refund.
tax and rent refund is a year after the fact. So the people who have been applying for a tax and rent refund in the last months or weeks have been filing not based on the 2010
The
tax
2009.
bills, but the 2009 tax bills. They're applying a year after the fact for a refund from the state on their 2009 tax. So next year, in 2011, people will have
The corrected
their
bill.
corrected bill. They'll know just what they have paid for 2010-11 fiscal year taxes. So I don't think that will be a problem.
Thank you.
Any other questions from council? Questions from the public? Yes, ma'am?
I called my mortgage company and told them not to pay my tax bill because it was illegal. They said as of November, which is right now, my house payment will be going up and it will be whatever the tax bill was. So what's going to happen now? My house payment will go up.
I mean, based on what the town manager said, when we send the new bills out, the mortgage company,
They're doing it right now. They're taking down my house payment. It's going up right now.
I mean, I would imagine that whenever they get the new bill, they'll make the adjustment and make whatever adjustments to what you've already paid in based on that. So, I mean, there may be, unfortunately, a month or two or whatever of, we'll say, an overpayment based on what you've had, but then they should be able to adjust your payment back down to cover that overpayment based on the new bill.
What happens if they don't?
I mean,
What I've seen in the past is the mortgage company will send you a check or reimburse you for whatever the overpayment was. That's pretty normal practice if it's something like that.
But once they set my payment, it's up for the whole of next year.
That's probably true. At the end of the year, I don't know when your mortgage payments,
They said
Sure,
they will
but-
work on it in November. It will go up in November. They're not going to take my word that that's illegal when the town's already sent them the bill. I really can't afford that house payment to go up for a whole year because the town sent them an illegal bill. I'm not very happy about that. I would like to have it taken care of this month. So that I don't have to pay a high house payment for a whole year.
Mr. Finnemore, you had a question?
I have several comments here, but first one, I want to deal with Mr. Eldridge. Mr. Eldridge, I think to help Millie out here, if the town has the addresses and knows who the mortgage companies are because they send them a bill, that the town should right now, today, not tonight, but probably in the morning, send out a letter to each mortgage company telling them whatever, however you want to word it carefully, that the invalid bill that they had received saying that the taxes were this much are going to be adjusted, and that we need to hold off, if possible, until such time as we get a valid bill, however you want to word that, to keep yourselves out of jail, I don't care. But I'm just saying that we have to, because the town did not properly collect the first half year's taxes. They need to go to the mortgage company and say, we're in the process of correcting this, and that we will, within, and give them an estimated date or whatever, to have a valid, accurate tax assessment done. I think that will help all of us with the mortgage companies and eliminate this problem. And I don't think it would be that hard to do. Okay, that's the first one. The other one was for Bill here. Don't get me wrong, I think he's right on track and he's doing a great job. I don't have an issue with that. I don't feel good tonight, so I either didn't hear him or I'm getting old. But he said something about mobile homes would not receive the same 1.32 factor as everybody else, or the residents, or whatever you want to say, whatever term you want to use. I thought we were going with the premise of equal taxation for all. Now, if I have a $100,000 home, I'm paying taxes on $100,000. If your mobile home is $45, then you should be paying the 1.32 that I'm paying on my 100,000 on whatever the value of my trailer is at that time. That's equal taxation for all. But if you're saying, I get taxed a higher ratio than a mobile home, that's wrong. Okay? Because you're not applying the taxation equally across the board. I get it. Houses depreciate slower than trailers depreciate. I don't have an issue with that. What I'm saying is, when you get to the bottom line of the value of the property, then it needs to be the factor, whatever you're using, for everybody in the town should be the same. I don't think that you can say, I'm taxing him $1 million, I'm taxing her $10. Me, because I sit up here, I'm getting $1 taxation. I don't think that's right. Make your depreciation, make your evaluations, whatever it is. But that 1.32 gets across the board to everybody, so everybody's tax ratio is the same. Okay? Now, I have another question for the council on taxation, but not with Bill. So if you'd like for me to hold that until after we're finished here, that will be fine. Just don't skip me on the rerun.
We won't. Any other questions from the dot?
What factor was given to personal property tax, the 1.32 factor? Because mobile homes are homes, but they are also can be considered as personal property. So what was the factor on mobile homes?
Could you read, I heard part of your question or comment, but not the last sentence.
What factor, did you give the 1.3 factor for an increase in taxes to mobile, what factor did you give to personal property? The 1.32 factor that was given to real estate and land?
No. I'll try to be clear, and I'll try to give a little more background than maybe you've even asked about. For this year, the way personal property was valued was it was all systematically entered into a computer software program, and it was valued at its original cost, less depreciation. The depreciation rate was a little higher on some equipment, some personal property than others. For example, it was faster on computer equipment than it was on machinery and equipment. It was faster on telephone equipment than it was on office furniture and equipment. All I think is reasonable. I think most people would agree that a computer depreciates more than a welder in the short run. And based on that cost, based on that depreciation, a valuation of that personal property account was calculated. And then the bottom line was multiplied by an 80% assessment ratio. That's the way the personal property was valued. The residential real estate valuation in town, if the residential real estate was unchanged from last year to this year, was to factor the land value and the building value by a factor of 1.32, 1.32 or 132%, which on the average brought those real estate accounts from their previous valuation of 56 or 62% to an 80% valuation ratio. When you look at sales prices and assessed values and compare the two, that was the goal, was to be at an 80% ratio. On mobile homes, what I explained in my initial statement to the council was that they were not factored. I didn't expect them to be factored, but it looks like in many cases they were further depreciated. They were reduced in value, and from what I can tell, the only notation of that change in value is a penciled value on the manual property record card. It doesn't describe how that 2010 valuation was developed. That's not something that I did. It's just something that I've observed is what was done. It's not something I think the town, as I recommended very clearly to the council a few minutes ago, should stay with in the future. I think we should have a mobile home value that is based on a formula that is there in black and white, whether it's on a computer system or on a manual card. For this year, it's not there. Mobile homes, especially mobile homes that are not linked with a piece of land and saleable with a piece of land that goes with the mobile home, often don't appreciate in value the way a stick-built or a modular home changes in value over time. I think it's reasonable that the mobile homes didn't increase in value or even went down in value some, but I'm just describing what I have observed. And for this year, in a short period of time, I can't look at every single mobile home and tell you whether that valuation is correct or incorrect, and redo every mobile home valuation in the town for this year. It's physically impossible unless you want to defer your tax commitment for substantially beyond the first week in December. The other thing I guess I just want to make clear is that even though mobile homes can be moved and in many respects are like personal property, under Maine statute, a mobile home is to be taxed as real estate, period. That's what the law says. One other point, as long as we're on it, that I want to point out to everybody is that mobile homes sell as casually as one of the chairs you're sitting on. They don't require a title. They don't require a real estate transfer tax. They don't require a filing with the Secretary of the State or the Registry of Deeds. They just sell, maybe with a receipt.
They are filed with the DMV, Department of Motor Vehicles.
The sales price of a mobile home is filed with the DMV,
Yes, with their registration number, with their number.
and their sales price?
Yes.
Even if they're not moved?
I was gonna say, it's because they have to be removed.
On land or in a park, they are, when you sell I'm a realtor. When you sell a mobile home, you have to contact DMV or the closing attorney, contact DMV with the registration number and to check to see if there's any loans on that mobile home or liens. Some of them are also recorded at the Registry of Deeds, but not always.
I've never gotten a deed for a mobile home. In my working on tax assessment records since 1977, I've never received something from the Registry of Deeds on a mobile home that wasn't sold with land.
Not a deed, it's a bill of sale. It's a bill of sale, but they are registered with the DMV. Some attorneys will also register them, record them at the Registry of Deeds, just in case there are any liens. A closing attorney will do both, check the Registry of Deeds or any good attorney, as well as the DMV.
I've never seen that documentation. The documentation that I routinely do see and sometimes have to help produce is that when a mobile home is moved from one place to another, there needs to be a certificate filled out by the town that it is being moved from, even if it's being moved from one site in a town to another, that any taxes that are outstanding on that mobile home have been paid. That I see all the time. But I have never seen any substantiation records from the DMV or any other state agency that document that a mobile home was sold from one person to another and the amount of consideration that was given for that mobile home. One of the problems that appraisers and assessors sometimes struggle with is trying to know what the sales price of a mobile home that didn't involve land was. I mean, it's often, okay.
Yes, sir.
I'm trying to help clarify something for the taxation. See, I don't understand why we're talking residential property or mobile homes as two separate categories. According to the Bureau of Taxation, Title 36, MRSA 383, residential property is defined as residential property is real estate which is suitable for seasonal or year-round use as a dwelling. So it's all one. Why are we separating it out? Making it two separate issues and two different things. a residential property is residential property. A mobile home is the same, according to the state, as a house, because it's a dwelling.
The only thing I would think there is the fact that if you're a mobile home in a mobile home park, you don't own the property. So your dwelling doesn't come with land, right? The landowner is somebody different than the person who actually owns the mobile home. That's the only thing I can think of that would make them different. If you had a mobile home that was on your own personal property that you bought and owned, that would then be considered more of a residential dwelling.
You're not taxed, Mike, for the property.
You're
You're
only
taxed with
taxed-
what you
taxed for
own
the
as
mobile
a resident. A residential property is what you personally own, not the land that it's sitting on. That's why I'm saying to you, if the value is just arbitrarily $50,000 for a trailer, that's the rate you should be taxed at. Okay? If I'm $100,000 because I live in a house, the rate should be the same. It shouldn't make any difference because I have to pay the $100,000 because I live in a house, but you have to pay the same rate that I do for this town to have equal taxation in this town. And I don't care what it is. If you're living in it, it's a dwelling.
I have a question about that.
It's simple.
I think that, if I can comment, I think that everybody's goal is the same. Right now, we tried to adjust the tax assessed values to an 80% valuation ratio. So a $100,000 house should be valued at $80,000. A $200,000 house should be valued at $160,000. We're very close to it. There are limits of reasonableness and accuracy that one has to be realistic about. Also, a $10,000 mobile home should be valued at $8,000. A $20,000 mobile home should be valued at $16,000. Everybody, I think, probably agrees that a mobile home or a home should be valued as consistently as we can make it at the valuation ratio times the market value for that property, whether it's a mobile home or a stick-built home or a modular home or whatever it is. For this year's valuation, I'm describing to you what happened. What happened was the residential properties were indexed by the 1.32 multiplier on land and buildings. The mobile homes were not. The mobile homes were apparently at least desk reviewed and and maybe more than desk reviewed with a review in the field and a bottom line value put on the property record card and then in the computer for each mobile home. I didn't do that calculation. But that's what I've observed. Most of them went down in value from last year. And that's what was done. And I don't see a real short-term way of addressing that issue. I would be very surprised if the mobile homes, not bundled with a parcel of land, increased in value at all similarly to residential properties of land and building. I wouldn't have expected to see the same multiplier applied to mobile homes as were applied to homes. I don't feel uncomfortable that they didn't increase in value at the same rate as homes. However, I certainly wish there was more documentation on each one of those property record cards than a bottom line value. And what I've suggested to you is for this year's tax commitment, in a short period of time, those cannot be measured, listed, photographed, looked at, and appraised. But I think they should be in the long run. Yes?
Mobile homes said just basically remain the same or the value is lower. What about the homestead exemption? Did they receive the larger homestead exemption? Because I know there are many trailers in this town that pay no taxes because the homestead exemption exceeds the value of the trailer.
That's correct. The homestead exemption, just so everybody knows, for the last few years before this year was $13,000. It was multiplied by a town's valuation ratio. If you were at 100% of value, it was at $13,000. This year, it's reduced to $10,000. This year, the valuation ratio of the town is $8,000. So it is only an owner-occupied mobile home that would be valued more than $8,000 that would receive a tax bill. Is that your question basically, or your observation?
Basically, but I just think that the way trailers are valued in this town, some of the trailers, and you said this larger exemption, I just don't think that's fair that the homeowners have to pay a larger portion of the taxes because the trailers aren't paying anything, but yet they're receiving a service.
Philosophically, I may agree with you, but as an assessor, the law is that every homeowner, whether it's a $4,000 mobile home or a $100,000 house, is entitled to the same amount of exemption. And if it eliminates the tax entirely on a mobile home, that's what happens. That's the law as it exists in the state right now.
So, Bill, just to ask a question to try and follow through with all this stuff. You would think it would be unfair if we multiplied mobile homes by the 1.32 to take them from 80% of what they were at last year?
I certainly suspect it would be, yes. I could only, and I say I could only suspect that because I have not systematically driven probably through every one of your mobile home parks, but not with a sampling or all of the property record cards and said, that mobile home appears to be about 6 or 7 years old, is 14 by 66, has a gable roof, has vinyl replacement windows and horizontal vinyl siding or vertical metal siding or metal roof or whatever it has, and is a mobile home that would be reasonably valued at 100% of this amount, and that its valuation either on last year's record was this amount and that was a reasonable estimate of its value or overestimate of its value by adjusted for the ratio. I haven't done that. And to give you a definitive answer to your question, I would have to do that. My general observation is that in any town that I've ever worked in, and in towns that I've worked in for some time, I do get some documentation on mobile homes. When people say, gee, I bought so-and-so's mobile home on lot 22, we ask for a bill of sale. Periodically, I go to the realtors and I say, do you have any multiple listing service for mobile homes that's sold in a mobile home park where I don't get a transfer from the Registry of Deeds and a real estate transfer document that establishes for a public record the sales price. I've never observed that mobile homes unattached to land increase in value anything like real estate of a house and land bundled together. My general observation across the board is that they don't increase the same way that houses do. But I haven't done that kind of definitive analysis in the town of Lisbon for 2010. Now, technically, there's also a problem. The valuation that is in the computer system now is the bottom line value that was manually put on that property record card for 2010 and then was inputted in the computer. It doesn't have as the current value the value from the previous year. So even if my answer was yes, it's not yes, but even if my answer was yes, that they should be increased in value the same way as residential homes were, or if it was they should be increased in value 1.05. A little bit, but not nearly as much as stick-built houses. The data no longer exists in the computer system the way I could readily do that type of. It would have to be a manual calculation. I can't hear you.
Do they have like a Kelly Blue Book for automobiles for, say, 1999 by 66?
They do.
Do they have like a general, and can that could be used to calculate a value? You say you have no basis at this point except pencil figures, but is there some kind of industry-approved valuation book for that type of thing right now?
There are a couple of blue-type books for mobile home valuation. And over the years, I have experimented in my work with subscribing to a blue book for a year or two and trying to utilize them. And I find them difficult to use. They may be something that a mobile home dealer dealing with mobile homes all the time has some greater level of expertise than I've been able to glean. But I've been, for example, in mobile home parks where I'm looking at in the same viewscape 4 Skyline Amber Ridge mobile homes. One of them has a metal roof. One of them has vertical metal siding and low-cost aluminum frame windows, the kind of windows that would be like storm windows on a lot of older houses. And another one still says Skyline Amber Ridge, but it has an asphalt shingle roof, horizontal vinyl siding, and vinyl windows, similar to vinyl replacement windows in a house, which in a mobile home are generally considered substantially better quality windows than the aluminum replacement type windows on a house. But that's not described in the Blue Book. It's described as a Skyline Amber Ridge, and I would feel very uncomfortable using the same value for each one of those same manufactured, same model mobile homes based on the limited descriptive detail in the Kelly Blue Book, or the equivalent to a Kelly Blue Book. I'm having trouble hearing you. I'm sorry.
Do they have a computer software program where you just type in a 1999 14 by 66 type of arrangement, town line or something like that, and then they give the options, like if the person has the vinyl windows and stuff like that, to add a factor, whether it's more expensive or not? I was just wondering, I know you didn't take up time because I know it's like
just an easier way, because you said there's no way you have a basis except for Library to make that, so you can get more accurate, where the property owner is coming back and saying, we're not being evaluated here properly, what basis do you use? Like, as of 2010, the computer software program for mobile homes is, this is what's industry approved, towns are using evaluation. So the property owner is getting short terms. But, I mean, that's fine. I know it's taking time to answer questions.
What,
What your options were.
if there's a third-party mobile home association dealer software program or something like you've described, I've never subscribed to it. But what I typically try to have for the mobile home records in towns where I maintain the tax assessments is the software that you have and I try to have in that software the length, the width, the size of the mobile home, the age of the mobile home, some information about the condition of the mobile home, just like a car. If a mobile home has been upgraded some, maintained very well, it's going to be a little more valuable than the same age mobile home that hasn't been taken very good care of. So condition is a factor, I think, in most people's analysis, as well as the age. And I try to grade the mobile home. I generally grade the old flat roof or nearly flat roof mobile home, vertical siding, metal roof, low-cost windows, the typical 1972, 1974 ordinary plain mobile home as a grade 2. I generally grade a mobile home that's a little better than that, might still have vertical metal siding, might have a metal gable roof, a little better quality than that old mobile home as a grade C. And I try to grade the mobile home that is more modern, has an asphalt shingle gable roof, has lower cost windows, aluminum type windows, horizontal siding as a grade 4, and then I try to grade the best quality mobile homes that have better quality windows, a grade 5. I think that works fine. I think it takes into consideration the differences in quality, the age of the mobile home, the size of the mobile home, the condition of the mobile home. Sometimes in some towns where I work in, I also make an adjustment for the location of the mobile home. In Skowhegan, for example, there's one where I maintain the tax assessments. There's one outstanding mobile home park where the mobile homes are very nice, the lots are very large, the people feel very comfortable and build additions onto their mobile homes, build garages, because they plan to stay there a very long time. I make no adjustment or very little of an adjustment for those mobile homes for their location in that mobile home park. But there are some other mobile home parks where the mobile homes are crowded together, right on top of each other, where generally it's lower cost mobile homes. And the same mobile home is worth a little less in that mobile home park than it is in the better location. So that's what I try to do in a systematic way, but that's not the way it was done in Lisbon in 2010. That's what I would suggest you work for in a future year.
Yes, sir.
You need to go through the council.
We're going to argue this all night, and as long as we have a fair tax base, I'm fine with it. But how big a problem are we talking about? What's the total valuation of mobile homes in this town as compared to non-mobile homes? Is it 10% of But the total home valuation, 5%, 50%, or what? I mean, we may be arguing all night about a minute.
Very good point. Do you have any idea, Bill?
No, I don't, but I would be surprised if it's a significant, I mean, I'd be surprised if it's 10%, particularly when you discount the value of the mobile home for the exemption.
I have one other question. If we go through this whole program and get all of this data and compile it beautifully so nobody ever has an argument with it, how much money are we going to make compared to what it's going to cost us?
We've actually, in the past, I mean, going through the reevaluation, have been looking at figures. If it was actually done by a third party, it could cost us anywhere from $300,000 to $400,000 to do it properly.
We certainly like to have a system everybody understands. Taxation, but I would like to not spend the whole evening on, I think you outlined it at the start, what the problem is.
Yeah.
Time to move on.
I'd like to move on if we can,
I agree.
if everybody agrees.
Yes.
I came in and I talked to the tax people and the town manager.
Can you come closer to the microphone, please? I've been asked to make sure people use the microphone.
I came in and talked to all the tax people and the town manager. The town did have the paperwork on Route 9, I think it was June 5th, '09. It did not get put in the computer, that's why we all got taxed for the land that we don't own. I understand all that now. And I think you're doing one fabulous job for the mess we was in. You're doing very well. But my problem is still my house payment. Would it be a problem if I could get my fax number to my mortgage company, to the town, just to tell them that it is your mistake for the taxes? And see if they could hold off on figuring my house payment for a short time.
I think that would be fine. I've taken a note, based on Mr. Finnemore's recommendation, that we look into trying to identify the mortgage properties and sending out notification that there has been an error in our taxing billing and that we will be issuing new bills at a such and such a date, and let them have a heads-up notice so that they can potentially not impact people with mortgages and their property, their mortgage payments going up.
I would appreciate it very, very much.
So we will look into that after tonight's meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions about taxes?
I think it's,
Question?
Mark, yeah.
Okay, I know that you're not working here full-time, you have other responsibilities, other towns and your business you're working on, but is there a way for people to make an appointment if they need to talk to you, Bill?
We have part of his staff on here at least 3 days a week, I believe.
He's the assessor. I know some people have said, they can talk to Alan, but they need to talk to the actual assessor to get a, definitive statement, and that's just been a problem I've heard.
At this stage, with my schedule, somebody wants to meet with me, it's going to be very hard. I'll try to do it. They could make a request through Alan that they'd like to talk to me. But on the issues that I've been talking about, and that's not somebody coming in and talking with me about an issue that doesn't fall into one of the general categories, but we're trying to get our heads together. We're trying to collaborate, and oftentimes, that is better than just one person making a decision totally on their own. But if there's somebody that wants to meet directly with me, I'll try to accommodate it, but I haven't set up a schedule here, and I can't right now. I have a couple of ongoing commitments that are still outstanding for this tax year. One of them is a town where I'm completing a revaluation, and another is a town that has a few very substantial industrial accounts that still have to be appraised for 2010.
Okay. All right, Bill, thank you very much.
Am I
Appreciate it.
dismissed?
Yes. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, next item, please, Twyla.
Town managers report.
What? I was going to get you in under audience participation.
Okay.
I didn't forget you. Next item, please.
Town managers report.
The trail system up off Ricker Farm is being completed. I'm hoping today they finish paving it. That will complete that section. We had a meeting here with the MDOT. It was a public hearing to address the rail crossing for the new section, the River Trail. That I thought was a very good process. They had their attorney here who would make their recommendations to the commissioner, and the commissioner will make a decision based on that. And hopefully we hear from them soon that we could have that crossing, so complete that trail and complete that design. That's what the Woodland and Curran, who's doing all the design work for that trail, is just waiting on that, and that will be done. On the November 15th, if anybody is interested, the MDOT will be holding its last public hearing here in Lisbon in this room on the Route 196 project. Hopefully they'll be making their final recommendations, and everybody can get to hear them. For the counselors, I enclosed an access management study that was done last year through, it was a contract through AvCog and MDOT. Much of what you will hear that night, they will be talking about access management, trying to control the number of driveway openings and things like that. It's a safety thing, and that we or you as a council will be talking about later on to maybe adopt that study that was done. For the new counselors and starting up on the new council group, we will start again with our council orientation. That will be December 21st. Legal counsel and myself will be talking about the state laws and things like that to help bring you up to date on that. And then on Saturday, January 8th, we'll be doing all the visiting of each department and going through so everybody has a clear understanding of what each department does. Last year, just so you know, Mr. Bickford, that was a 5-hour session. We visited every department. I thought that was really good. It gives you an insight into some things that you may not know or you may know it already. But when it comes to the budget process, I think it really does help in understanding the needs of each department. Just so everybody knows, Ora Madden officially retired last Thursday, and I'd just like to say that 26 years of commitment to this community is very commendable. They had a party for her a week ago Friday, and then there's a small get-together here with the staff, and she'll be missed. And she's been replaced by a local girl, Katie Brunell, who filled that position. And that's all I have. Any questions?
Next item, please.
Economic development and community development recommendation.
We had an interview committee. It consisted of George Roy, Rich Vayu, Gina, myself, and our finance director. We had set up interviews for 4 people. 2 of those backed out, and we interviewed 2 people. We have a recommendation for the council. It's a unanimous decision to offer the position to a gentleman. Do you want to do executive session on that, or do you want to just move forward with it? It's really up to you.
I'll leave it up to council. Do you want to discuss the personnel matter in executive session first before we make a final vote?
I think that'd be wise, but
Okay.
details.
Thank you.
All right. Okay, next item.
Audience participation. At this time, those in the audience who wish to address the council, please come forward.
I'm Larry Fillmore from Lisbon. I came down and talked to the assessor's office to get an update on what was going on, and I found this information sheet. I don't know who the author is, but it was under the town of Lisbon. I find it disturbing that this thing says it's talking about the tax bill and the reevaluation and all this and that. This brought the Lisbon assessment ratio into conformation with state law for the first time in a few years with an assessment ratio of 80%. Now, the way I read that, we're in compliance with the state of Maine assessment ratio. But I find that very hard to believe when the property tax Title VI taxation says that the assessment rate's 70%. I find that very misleading, and again, I find it very inappropriate for the town, because it's under town stationery, to publish any information that is not accurate. If they had said exceeds the state ratio by 10%, I would say this is accurate. But people who read this would believe that the assessment ratio for the state of Maine is 80%. That's not accurate. Okay? I believe that we all deserve accurate information. I don't want to sugarcoat anything. Tell it like it is and take the licks where they fall. But publishing information sheets that are misleading is wrong. I don't care how we cut it. And I think we need to correct this one in the wording of it as soon as possible. People need to know that we are 10% above the state of Maine assessment ratio. You guys said it, I'm not going to argue that one with you right now.
May I respond back to that? No,
Certainly.
When you read that, I guess when you read it, you get different perceptions of it. And the one I think of right off the bat is prior years coming up to this, even when I first got on the council, one of the things that Jerry, actually one of my first, say, duties or obligations was I was working with Jerry to try to get the town familiarized with reassessment. And at that point, Jerry had actually explained to me why we were not really meeting the state obligations because we were below the 70%. We were at 60-some odd percent. So the idea of making a statement for the first time, we are finally in compliance with the state, whether it's between 70 and 100, that 80 laying in between there is kind of an actual statement that we are, for the first time in quite some time, meeting the obligations that the state puts upon us. So again, I don't think it's an incorrect statement. It may be perceived differently by different people, which I agree. But way you wrote it and way you read it did sound like it was misleading to you, which it really isn't. It's just really stating that for the first time in a long time, we actually do fit within the guidance of what the state asked us to be. That's all. Yeah.
I didn't say that it wasn't in the guidance, but you're saying the conformance with state law. That word's wrong in the sentence because it exceeds it.
No, anywhere from 70 to 100.
It doesn't conform to it because then it would be equal to.
Yeah, I won't argue, but anywhere from what we understood going into it, anything above 70%, 70 to 100, that's all conforming.
Fine.
Yeah, that's how we
That's
were
fine, but I'm
told
saying
anyways,
that
yeah.
the sentence misleads the people because the state assessment rate is not 80%, it's 70%.
That's the minimum.
That's the minimum.
That's the minimum.
It is the minimum.
It's the minimum. The state would like you at 100%.
We need to say that to the town instead of not telling them where we stand.
We simply said we were in conformance with the state standards.
Okay, fine. All right, I guess it's me. But I'm just saying, there's been so much lack of communication and misinformation put out that we need to apply the KISS principle. Keep it simple, stupid, okay? We need to keep it simple. We need to make it very accurate, down to earth, so that everybody understands what's going on. Okay? That's all I'm saying. I could read it that way, too. I've been to all these meetings. I know where it is. I know what it's saying. But my point is that the wording is misleading and could have been worded differently, okay, so that we don't have issues. And that was my point. I've been to every one of these. You've seen me up here. I got it. Okay, guys, I got it. So, but what I'm saying is we need to make sure the information is clear to the public. That's all. Thank you.
Any other audience participation? Michelle?
Correct me if I'm wrong, but so far tonight, what we've heard is that the 1.32% didn't apply to the mobile homes. Okay. And that the recommendation was that at some point in the future, not now, obviously, because we need to get the commitment out there because, for obvious reasons, that the recommendation is to do a revaluation of the mobile homes because that needs to be done, correct? Have I heard that so far?
Every
Yeah.
home in Lisbon, I think he was
I
mentioning.
mean,
Yeah.
we need to do every home.
I'm talking
Mobile
about
homes
tonight
are-
only.
Yeah.
Talking about what he said tonight only, so far.
Yeah.
And that was because of time constraints. He doesn't recommend doing it now because it would defray the time frame in meeting the tax commitment, okay? Mobile homes is what was brought up first. The 300 to 400,000, however, I believe, is the whole piece, not the small less than 10% that I think this gentleman was talking about.
Right.
The 300 to 400,000 buys us all
The
in
whole
this
picture.
area a new valuation.
Commercial, residential, everything.
Right. What I want to have a good understanding and be 100% sure of is that you're not going to proceed with just the mobile homes until you are ready to proceed town-wide. Because I don't, we
Well,
wanted to maintain fair
As,
taxation.
as we have explained, and I'm not going to speak for everybody, I'm going to speak me as counselor. What I've
Right.
tried to explain is that this needs to be done in phases because the town has never appropriated for us the monies to go out and do the full thing in one effort,
Correct,
right?
right.
So the
We've had
council
phase
needs to
one.
decide what steps they want to take. We've taken one step, which was doing the land valuation. The next steps are to do buildings and measures. If our tax assessor, whether he's going to be our full-time one or whether the current one recommending, makes a recommendation to us based on what he's seeing as to which next phase should we go to, I'm going to follow that. If he says mobile homes right now is more important than going to do the rest of the houses, we'll go do mobile homes. If he says do the major houses, stick builds first, and wait on the mobile homes because they're a smaller percentage, we'll wait on mobile homes. I mean, I'm going to go with the assessor's recommendation on how he feels we should best approach getting this done, knowing we have to do it in phases.
Right. But I believe that recommendation went out there because it was found out that the mobile homes, if I can finish, the mobile homes didn't get to share in the wealth of the 1.32% increase like the rest of us did. So they haven't seen that increase. I have several friends that own mobile homes. Their taxes actually went down. The rest of us didn't get to benefit from that. So I guess I'm a little concerned that that would be the first target when A, they didn't get that increase, and B, some of them have zero tax because of the homestead exemption. So is it fair to target one versus the other rather than to wait and do them all? And if the three phases that I understood was the one that we already did, the land, the second was to be the buildings, and the third was to be the rest of us, and that included mobile homes and the homeowners combined. Not 4 phases, but 3. It's always been approached as 3 phases. So I guess I'm a little confused because it's sounding like there might be a fourth, and I want to have a thorough understanding as I think everybody else does.
Mr. Van Tynen is putting together a proposal for us to do the reval over a hopefully 2-year period. He said it may take 3, depending upon what he's finding. He's still finding inaccuracies in much of the data. So I think he's looking at, we have to, the commercial appraisal or reval has to be done as a whole entity by itself. And the list and measure, I'm pretty confident that the list and measure will include the trailers. They will divide the town into sections like we had planned to do this past summer. We took it out of the budget, that we were going to divide the town into quarters and then send people out to do the list and measure, which would also include the trailer parks. So I'm hopeful that that will be done in that fashion. Whether it's all done in 1 year and then they start doing data entry, I'm not sure, but he's putting together a proposal for us to do that. I've asked him for that, and amongst many other things, but
So then, once all phases are complete, based on that data, the figures, will those figures then be generated out to everybody so that we're
Yes.
all receiving it? Not, like I said, the land was done, we know that that didn't go out and didn't apply to this year's
Right.
taxes. So are you going to be waiting then and sending everything out at the same
all the
time
data has to
everybody's
be
impacted?
in the system, land, list and measure, everything has to be in the system, and then they actually will double-check their data, they'll print off samples, and if we can't use that for commitment that particular year because we aren't done, then it won't be till the following year. They try to get all the information, and you can see Mr. Van Tynen is very methodical how he thinks and how he does things. So it will all be done at the same time.
Right, no, I have no issues with him whatsoever. I don't think anybody has brought that. I just want to know that because this whole 80%, it was to try to bring equal taxation across the board. That's what has been talked about now for, I don't know, what, 2 years now that we've been going
Forever,
back and
yeah.
forth over this at
Forever.
least? Okay, so I just want to be clear and I think everybody wants to know that when it comes down to the bottom line, that we're all equally going to share in it.
Yes.
And there are homes out there that right now I think are overtaxed because people because of depreciation just as much as mobile homes. And that's because you've got homes that have been out here for a long period of time and that people haven't been able to afford to keep up with them. And their appreciation, I think, has depreciated over the years just as much as some of ours have increased. But not everybody's had that luxury of being able to maintain their home, and they have seen a lot of wear and damage to them, and some that are now actually abandoned because of that.
Mr. Van Tynen has brought all these discrepancies forward to us, to me anyway, as well as new homes that might be actually overvalued or undervalued. And he actually has to go out and revisit these homes. So
Right.
he's got quite a bit of work to do.
No, I like the idea of the picture. I think a picture, when it's a new home, should be there at the very first tax bill that's generated, and then on down the road, periodically, when this is done, it should be kept up with. I like that idea. I'm just saying, at the very end of these phases, and it was starting to sound like there was now this little fourth phase in there, and that's why I wanted to have some clarification, because I want to know that at the end, when you've finished everything, all three, that at that point, that's when it's
That's when
all
it's
going to
done.
get flooded out there for everybody to share the wealth in. So I just wanted some clarification for that, because it's been kind of back and forth, and I feel like a ping pong ball going back and forth, so,
We all do.
We all do, yeah, thank you.
thank you.
Any other audience participants? I saw a lady in the back. Yes, ma'am?
Hi, my issue is not with taxation.
name,
Actually, I'm
please?
willing to pay my taxes, and I've lived here for 50 years. Most every one of you probably knows my husband, Joe Noel. He comes in crying when he has to pay his tax bill. My issue is basically with some of the ordinance. With winter coming, there's no parking on the side of the road, correct? Am I correct? With parking in, whether it's residential or on the highway, no overnight parking? When does that usually go into effect?
It goes into effect sometime in November, I
November.
believe, in the next. I'm not sure.
November 1st?
Usually
Maybe.
Public Works lets
No
us know.
overnight parking? But my issue is not necessarily with that. What we have found in our neighborhood, and our Public Works Department is great. I just want you to pass that on. I'm very proud of our Public Works Department. Our streets are maintained very, very well. I could get to work at 6 o'clock in the morning because they plowed it, being an RN. I have to get out early. So my issue, however, is once they come around and plow, we live in a neighborhood where there is a lot of portable basketball hoops, and they're right at the edge of the street. I think we need to change that. In 1st November, they need to be moved in 3 feet. It took me 2 hours to blow my driveway to get out. And the reason for that is because when the snowplow comes around, he tries to avoid the people who have their basketball hoops right at the edge of the grass, mind you. So we don't want to hit that hoop, because then we're going to get called on the carpet because we either broke it or the plow blade hit it or whatever. And we need to have the police go around and give notice that those have to be moved 3 feet in onto the lawn come 1st of November. My husband's 86 years old. I'm the one that snow plows now to get out to be on duty by 7. I don't think it's fair for me to have to, take everybody else's snow in my driveway because everybody has basketball hoops right at the edge of the road. And like I said, I really appreciate our Public Works Department is great. I have no,
We'll make sure we do a public notice on that and everybody knows.
but
This
the
is-
police, we have we have a bigger police department to bring out notice than South Portland. Per manpower, mind you. Because I went online and I checked how many officers we have. You mean to tell me they can't go around once in a while, once that ordinance becomes to put notices on those
Oh, yeah,
basketball
they'll do
hoops
that,
or
once we
on their
get the
houses?
ordinance. Once we get the ordinance,
In
yeah.
in my area, I haven't seen a police car for a long, long time, mind you.
Where do you live?
So,
Street? What street?
I live in Gross Development, Gross area. If they come around, we're lucky. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other audience participation? Mr. Graham?
It may please the council to know that I'm not going to speak on one single subject that has come up tonight. My name is Rick Graham, and I live on Webster Road, and as you were all informed earlier, I will not be your new at-large counselor. But I don't know if anyone noticed, the fact that we had 5 people running for 2 seats seemed to generate some press. I thought it was good for the town of Lisbon.
Absolutely.
I had a good time, and I want to thank Fern for being a good sport, and congratulate everybody that did win, even Fern. And I just think it was a good time, and good for good for the town. A lot of participation in running, along with a high voter turnout. And if you like the way things are going, or you don't like the way things are going, you got to vote. You got to get out and vote. You got to get involved and run. Councilor Cody said over and over, we want participation from the people of the town. We got it this time. And, I think it was real good for Lisbon, and hopefully it's a trend that, I was talking with Twyla, hopefully this is a trend that's going to continue. So I just wanted to congratulate everybody, on new councilor Roger Bickford, and everybody else that did win. And how close are we to budget season anyways?
Pretty close.
Probably close.
Too
There we
close.
go.
Thanks, Rick.
Thank you, Eric.
Dot?
Dot Fitzgerald. I'm also a not winner for the town council. Congratulations to Fern. Congratulations to Roger Bickford. And I thought there was a very good turnout, and I thought I had a very good showing. So anyway, another vein. Mr. Eldridge mentioned the November 15th meeting with the Maine Department of Transportation. What comes out of that meeting is going to affect everyone, every citizen of the town of Lisbon, every citizen, every business. As I mentioned at the last town council meeting, they have 3 proposals: a 3-lane highway, a 5-lane highway, and a bypass. The 3 lanes is 1 lane each direction from Topsom to Lewiston, with a center turning lane, 5 lanes, 2 lanes each way with a center turning lane, and a bypass. We have many businesses right on Route 196 that could be severely affected by a bypass or by the 3 or 5 lanes. I don't like the center turning lane anyway. My third thing, on another vein, we're nearing the end of the first half of our fiscal year. Where are you on the Reggie Tipitot property? I hate to keep bringing it up, but this is something that has been ongoing for some time, for too long.
Yep, it's in the court system, and it has been in the court system for some time. Our attorney and Mr. Tivitot filed their briefs on Friday. Our attorney filed it, last date was this Friday. So the court system has it. It's an appeals court. And we are now just in a holding pattern until the court decides to make a decision on that.
Do you have an estimate as to what it has cost the town in legal and court fees to date for that Reggie Tippedot
I
property?
don't have it at the tip of my tongue, not right now.
Would it not be prudent at this point in time to make Mr. Tippedot a reasonable offer and purchase that property from him and avoid future legal and court fees? At this point, at the last town council meeting, it was pointed out that we have a considerable amount of money in undesignated funds. Would it not be prudent to make him a reasonable offer, purchase that property from him, and avoid further legal fees? Can I get an answer?
We tried that once, and he did not like the offer. He wanted more money than the town was willing to pay. This goes back, I don't know,
Before I was here.
6 years ago.
How about
Anyway.
trying again? Do a little bit of negotiation.
I honestly don't believe it's cost the town that much in attorney's fees. Even though it's a long duration, there's not much involvement in there between those time periods. A lot of it is waiting from the court system and them setting certain dates. So I don't think we've invested in the process that we've just most recently started here, a lot of money in that vein.
So this is going to be an ongoing thing for maybe 1, 2, 3, 5 years?
I don't believe so. I think it ends after this appeals. This is as far as it can go.
Yep.
It's been through all the stages, and we've tried everything, and it's as far as it can go now, and this is his last appeal, and then whatever the judge rules.
And then you'll end up buying it anyway.
We own it.
If we lose, not.
You what?
Only if we lose it, we already own it. We already took it, based on liens and everything. I mean, he's appealing our process of what we did. So we won't be buying anything from him if the court rules in our favor.
And if they don't?
Then that's a different issue, and council will have to address what steps, if any, to be taken from there. It's with the court at this point in time.
I think it's a little ridiculous to treat a taxpayer that way, but my opinion. Yes?
Excuse me, but I think that sometimes we have to set a precedent, and when somebody doesn't follow the law and what needs to be done, if 10 people in town decided to do the same thing, would we allow them to do that? Dot, we went on with that property for 6 or 7 years. I don't remember the exact time frame. He was given numerous times, and I don't want to go into discussing the case, but I just want to tell you that I feel that it's, at some point, you have to set a precedent, and I think that's what we've done here. And it's unfortunate, Dot, but it is what it is.
But then you have to look at Mr. Tippetot's side of it. The road was closed off. I don't know legally.
I don't, Dot, I really don't want to get into this detail at this point in time. It is where it is. It's with the courts. We've had all of these discussions numerous times before, and what Mr. Tibbetot's brought before us has not been substantiated, and that's why we're where we're at today.
Even the damage by snow plowing?
Even the damage by the snowplows, the whole thing, we've discussed it all numerous times. I don't want to rehash it all, starting all over again now. Yes, sir.
How you doing? My name's Anthony Hemphill. Some of you may know me. Right now, I'm in the middle of looking at the Lisbon mill, the Will Rumble mill, and purchasing it. I heard a lot of discussion about some of y'all's road problems and property. I just have one quick question. I can't seem to find an answer anywhere. How many cars come through this town every day?
I think DOT could give you that.
15,000 cars a day.
15,000 cars. And again, these are just numbers that, seem to come across on my hotel pad here. From my understanding, and these numbers may be, off, the Lisbon Falls has 4,420 citizens. Is that correct?
9,400, is it? Well,
Well,
he's
yeah,
talking
Lisbon Falls, though, would be about 45. That sounds fairly reasonable.
Okay.
Twyla, you might know off the top of your head better.
Right. He's just probably talking about the population in the falls,
In the
not the
falls.
village and the
Right,
center.
just the falls.
Okay.
It's probably half of, what, 9,000,
Yeah,
10,000?
yeah.
Half of 10.
I think about a week ago, me and Steve sat down, and one of the questions I asked him was, what would the city like to see, happen with the mill? What would you like to see to come there? And I'll be coming to y'all's meetings now to see how things are progressing, but, maybe you guys can keep that in mind. And next week, I can't meet everybody. My schedule's pretty busy too, but, if you guys can start thinking things like that, a lot of people say pubs and pool halls and a bowling alley, but, there's other things, the way I'm trying to look at this is bringing 60 to 80 new jobs to this town. So keep that in mind. So hopefully we can catch up and get a handshake in, and we can try to figure out a way of trying to turn some more jobs up in this town.
That'd be great.
Dale?
Thank
We
you.
appreciate it.
Mike, Dale had it.
Oh, Dale. Huh? Okay. Yes, sir.
Just wanted to introduce myself. My name's Garrett Mason. I'm your new senator for this district, and I just wanted to say, what an honor it is to represent you in Augusta. I'm truly humbled by it, and I just want to invite you all to be part of the process. We went to Augusta today, me and Representative Crafts, and it's very exciting what we got going on up there right now, and it's your government, so get involved with it. And if anybody wants to be a guest in the Senate chamber, I'd be happy to have you. And if you have any questions, please feel free to get a hold of me, and very much look forward to it. So thank you very much.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Any other audience? Mr. Bickford?
Proud yet, Gina?
Oh, yeah. I'm trying not to be, but I am. Thank you.
I'm Roger Bickford, your new councilman, and I just want to say thank you to all the people that put their trust in me to represent them. I will try to do a good job, the best job I can. Some of you are going to find me a little feisty at times.
Really?
That's what we want.
You're going to get it. But I just thank you very much, and glad to work with you.
Thank you. Welcome aboard, and congratulations.
Two things. A reminder, I am still on the advisory board.
Yes, you are.
Keep in mind that. Do you have a name for the old high school?
Campus Commons was the name that was chosen. Yeah, it was announced at the opening there.
Liz Curtis came up with that name.
Yes, Liz, yep. Did you have a question?
Yes, I did.
Can you go to the microphone, please? Just so I don't get in trouble anymore. Getting notes passed to me, making people go to the microphone.
I have a question Mrs. Fitzgerald brought up about Mr. Thibodeau's case, and it just got me to thinking. Where is the town on the retrieval of the $32,500 that was stolen from economic development? I'd like to know what's going on with that. Nobody seems to know a thing. It's been a while.
Actually, I think we just gave it, didn't you give an update at the last?
I sent you the council's a notice in last meeting. I think we discussed it as well.
Yep.
The district attorney is not moving forward on that. They don't feel they have enough evidence to pursue it, and that's where the case is at this particular time.
You're kidding.
No, and it's actually been passed back and forth. We turned it over to the district attorney initially. They put it to the Attorney General's office. The Attorney General's office reviewed it. They sent it back to the district attorney's office. I mean, this thing has been browbeated all over the place.
Was it for lack of investigation? What was the problem? Because many other towns are in
I
the
don't
paper
know.
right now for people absconding funds.
I don't
just
have
find it
that
odd.
answer, Mary Ann. I really don't have
Right.
that answer. I was as surprised as I think anybody was that they elected to wash their hands of this. I mean, it somewhat tells you about how these court systems work and how the district attorney's offices and stuff like that work. I mean, there's a lot of little stuff, I believe, out there that gets just brushed by the wayside that people get hurt on and you don't get recouped for.
Well, that's too bad, because I think most people know what happened.
Yeah, my understanding is that they couldn't prove it was his signature on the paperwork, so they had no case.
Whose
about that.
signature?
Well, the person in question here, who, we all know who we're talking about here. I
Yes.
don't want to get in trouble for saying
Right.
his name, but they couldn't prove it was him without the signature. There was dueling experts over handwriting analysis, and they gave up on it when they couldn't get a definitive proof that it was his signature.
Plenty of people saw him take the check in his hand.
Yeah, well, that's all I've heard about the case.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Stein?
Who signed the check for Mr. Dan Feeney? On the person we're talking about?
On that,
The money that we lost?
I believe he signed his own check on those revolving loan funds.
And
I'm not
who
sure.
approved
No?
it? And who approved it?
Oh, Rodney signed it? Okay, our old finance director.
Okay, and the council don't have nothing to do with that?
They should have had something to do with it.
They should have. It never, I
Never
believe
came.
it was
Nobody's
never.
gonna be held accountable for that money that we lost.
That's why we put a system in place now that it has to go through several people so
And
that
I elect you people up here and you don't do nothing about it?
we turn it to.
Nobody's gonna be held accountable. We just lost that right out the door.
We turn it over to the,
Now, what about the woman that found it and got fired? She lost her job when she found the problem.
She
Nothing was
resigned.
done.
She didn't quit.
No,
She
Huh?
did not get fired. She resigned.
she resigned.
Hey, okay, that's your words. That's your words.
I wasn't here at the time, so.
Any other audience participation? Okay, next item?
There's nothing under appointments, so the next item is counselor communications.
I have
Counsel-
two. I have two.
Certainly.
I'll be quick. On the 12th of November, and I think it's at 2 in the afternoon, is the unveiling of the mural on the side of the Down East Energy Building. The painting that's behind you was divided into 4 sections, and it was enlarged onto large pieces of material that is paintable and can be used outdoors. It was a community painting project for over a few months. The art teacher from the high school drew it out onto sections. It was numbered and color-coded, and people helped to produce it. She came back and touched it up, and so you will see that on the side of the Down East Energy Building. Public Works will be installing it on the 12th, and we'll have a small ceremony for that. It's part of our revitalization efforts. It's something that we hope to continue to do throughout town on buildings that are empty and just would need some scenery. Also, too, on the 20th of November. Oh, sorry. I didn't get it, I'm sorry. I've been very busy the last few days, very. Sorry, forget the last comment.
What time is that again?
I think it's at 2 o'clock. I kind of have gotten emails
So
in
it's
the
a
last
Friday.
week.
I'll just follow up to you.
I'm sorry, yeah.
It's okay. We've been trying to plan what's something called a community covenant, and it recognizes all our armed service personnel and prior veterans and current. We've been trying to get dates to make it work, and with the election and all that's been going on, all of our elected officials, we're struggling to get them all in the same place. And now I'm hoping this is all over, that we will be able to get them committed sometime in January so we can do this. We're working with Captain Josh Jakes from the Army Reserves, and it's going to be a real nice affair. So, working with all our armed force people. So, it will be announced when we finally get it together. Thank you.
Any other council communication?
Okay.
Actually,
Yeah.
I just also wanted to thank for the re-election night that I had on November 2nd, and the great support from the town, and it's very humbling to have that type of support, and I just wanted to thank everybody for that.
Anything else?
yes,
I have one thing. I just wanted to note that due to all the communication things that have come up, I've invoked having our packets delivered to us on Friday afternoon, so that for those of you who either couldn't or didn't want to come in and pick up your packages or couldn't, they'll be delivered to your house now on Fridays, at least for my remainder of tenure as chairman, and you can continue it after that, but at least hopefully that minimizes some communications and makes you more prepared for your meetings.
Good idea.
And,
Vern?
and again, I want to thank everybody that went out and voted, not just for me, but for Dodd and for Rick and for Mr. Bickford and Mr. Lemieux, I think, and everybody else that was running, because I think it's important that a lot of people, and it was, as Twyla said, a very active voting day for a lot of different reasons. So thank you very much, and I do appreciate everybody that did run, because it's nice to see people interested in taking part in our town. And thank everybody again, and hopefully everybody stays active and keeps volunteering, and it continues on, right? It would be interesting to see every election contested and many people move forward. So thank you.
Excuse me, I guess I should say the same. Thank you very much. My race was unopposed, but I actually forgot until late last night that I had run for re-election. And not that I discount any of the votes that were cast for me, but I was very, very busy with some other races. And I think Dale said, didn't you get re-elected too? And I said, I guess so. I guess I did. I forgot. But thank you, the town of Lisbon. And I'm sure we're all going to try to continue to serve you as best we possibly can.
Okay.
Do you have any information on the Thanksgiving dinner?
Judy is working on that. She's got some personal issues that she's dealing with. As soon as she gets back, she was in Boston today.
Okay.
I expect to see her tomorrow.
And don't forget on that point that the Lisbon Community School Student Council wants to help out and provide some assistance.
Oh, good.
When I met with them the other few weeks ago, they're looking to do some volunteering and support out in the community.
I'm ready
so.
to peel 100 pounds of potatoes starting at 6 o'clock in the morning.
All you got to do is let them know.
Go with instant. That's what I use.
Let Ryan Patry know, and he'll get the group lined up.
Show us.
Just to remind everybody that the drama department at the Lisbon High School throughout the weekend is supposed to be raining. They're putting on a
Midsummer Night's Dream by the Drama Department this weekend. Lisbon High School.
Actually, I think it's a rainy football game. That's
Is this, Michelle, is this throughout the day? They have different showings throughout the day? One in the afternoon and one in the evening.
Friday and Saturday night are at 7 and Sundays at 2.
Thank you,
Thank
Dylan.
Well,
Good point.
Yes.
Football game, 1 o'clock Saturday afternoon, playoffs. Winthrop, right?
yes.
Got to watch them go down hard.
That's right.
That's right, Winthrop.
Rain, snow, whatever, right?
That's it.
All right. Any other communications? Next item?
You have one item in executive session, Order 2010-183, to go into executive session per 1 MRSA, Section 4056A, Personnel Matters.
I'd entertain a motion.
I make a motion that we move forward with what Twyla just said.
Motion from Councilor Rochelle,
Second that.
second from Councilor Lunt. All those in favor?
Order
Thank you all.
passes
We'll
7-0.
go into executive session.